Alison Thewliss.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. And I first want to thank the member for Sutton Coldfield for securing this debate. I agree with very much of what he has said, and his expertise on this matter is very valuable, and also agreed with much that the Shadow Foreign Secretary said. I pay tribute also to the member for Leicester East, who is steadfast in his work in the all-party group in Yemen. And I would also like to take the opportunity to pay tribute to the aid agencies who are working in incredibly difficult circumstances, both for their own staff and for the people that they're dealing with in Yemen just now. The member for Sutton Coldfield mentioned the difficulties in reporting from Yemen, and I must say that I rely quite heavily on some of the first-hand testimony coming through from Twitter, because that seems to be a reasonable way of getting information out of the country. And I've mentioned in a letter to the government before the case of Hisham al-Amizi, who was taken by the Houthis on the 12th of August this year and has yet to be seen again. And I would ask the government to do all that they can to try and secure the safety of journalists in Yemen as well. Mr Deputy Speaker, today I'm missing right now the opening of a new nursery, Silverdale Nursery in Dalmarnock. That nursery has 140 places for children under 5, and it struck me while thinking about this that if 140 children in Dalmarnock were to die today, we would do something about that. Yes. If they were to die tomorrow, we would do something about that. If it was nurseries around the country where 130 children were dying, as the 130 under 5s every day are dying in Yemen, we would do something about that. We would do something about that urgently and seriously, because we would not have our own children dying of a very preventable cause, of extreme malnutrition and the disease that takes hold so easily when those children do not have the food and resilience that they need. One child is dying every 10 minutes in Yemen, Mr Deputy Speaker. If you think about the number that have died even since this debate started, that is a shocking thing. And we cannot accept that any longer. It has been going on far, far too long, and we have a global responsibility to children wherever they are to make sure that they are safe, that they are fed, and that they will live a happy and healthy life. And anything that we can do to that end is something that we must do and we should do urgently. For those children that survive, that impact will be lasting. Millions of children are out of school and have been out of school. They don't have a nursery to go to, Mr Deputy Speaker. They are living with stunting, with a lifelong condition that will affect their growth and development and their cognitive development throughout the rest of their lives. And in 2012, UNICEF were already warning of stunting, that 58% of children under 5 were stunted in 2012, before this latest conflict took place. That is a generation being left with a life-limiting condition that we could do more to prevent. Mr Deputy Speaker, the International Committee of the Red Cross reported yesterday that they had purchased 750,000 litres of fuel to ensure that the water pumps in Hodeida and Taiz can operate. These pumps will only last a month on that fuel. The International Committee of the Red Cross also reports that a total of 9 other cities do not have sufficient fuel to run their water supplies in the city, which is an absolutely critical situation when you consider that Yemen has experienced already one of the largest cholera epidemics in history, which has already left around 2,000 people dead. The outbreak seems to be on the wane, but without water and without access to appropriate sanitation, that will almost certainly come back. And as the Honourable Member for Sutton Coldfield mentioned, that diphtheria is also taking hold as well, a very preventable disease that we don't even see here. So I want to ask the Minister, and I know he will do his best on this, what is the government doing to ensure that fuel gets into the country? Because without fuel, the petrol pumps will run dry, and this will have a knock-on effect on the prices of food. The aid very much needs to get in, and aid agencies say so, but all agencies are also stressing the absolute necessity of getting commercial goods in. The scarcity and the fuel prices mean that prices are high, and even where there is food, people can't afford to feed themselves. They don't know where their next meals are coming from, and it must be incredibly heartbreaking to be able to see food on a shelf and not be able to afford to buy it to feed your family, Mr Deputy Speaker. And bear in mind in all of this that employees in Yemen, many of them have not been paid for some time, over a year in some cases at least. And Médecins Sans Frontières reported in October that 1.2 million Yemeni civil servants have received little to no salaries for over a year. MSF pays the salary of 1,200 public health staff that they are using in their clinics, but quite clearly, Mr Deputy Speaker, that is not enough by any manner of means. And if the doctors that are trying to treat the people that are starving have no money to feed themselves either, that is a situation that is just a disaster. And I would urge ministers to consider what else they can do to get more money in to allow these staff to be paid, to get the economy restarted and to make sure that people can actually have something to live on. I would also urge, as I've urged before in previous statements, we need to see aid getting into the country in the first place, that the blockade must be removed as soon as possible, but that aid also needs to be able to travel around Yemen as well. And the border posts and the visas and the difficulties that aid agencies are facing in actually getting around the country is preventing that aid from flowing. And it's clear as well that the different factions to this conflict are using this system as a means of diverting aid to their own people as well. So the aid that might be intended to go to one place of desperate need is being diverted. And it's not to say that those other people might not need it, because I'm sure they do, but that aid is being diverted from the people that need to get it. And we need to do more to sort of make sure that that aid can get through to those that need it and that it is appropriately used when it gets there. And I would urge ministers to do anything that they can in that respect to make sure that aid convoys going through the country can actually get where they need to be. And finally, Mr Deputy Speaker, I would like to touch on the issue of arms sales, because the arms sales to me are a critical part of the influence and the leverage that we have as a country in this conflict. Now, the meeting that was referred to earlier of the Quint, the communique that came out of the Quint meeting, to me concentrated far, far more, sadly, on weapons. And in the security situation, which I know and appreciate is difficult, but it concentrated far, far more on that than it did on the humanitarian situation and in the need to get goods in through the ports. I'm sure that the 25 aid agencies who contacted the Foreign Secretary in their open letter will feel very let down by that. And I would echo the comments of the Shadow Foreign Secretary that the attendance list of that meeting could have been broader, and the efforts need to be made to get more people from Yemen involved in these things, actually from Yemen, from civil society, from organisations working there on the ground. And if you look at that picture as well, you'll note, I don't think there may be one woman at the back of the photograph as well, but women are not being included in this process as well. And you need women as part of this process to help make the peace and make it sustainable.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady. When the national dialogue process was going on, and I was out in Yemen for that, we spoke to women who'd not been part of the governance process. We spoke to young people who'd not been part of the governance process. The national dialogue was giving them an opportunity. The Houthi involvement and the conflict killed that opportunity. Otherwise, there would have been more women involved. That, I think, is what some of the people are fighting for.
Yes, and I absolutely appreciate that, and having heard the testimony from some of the aid agencies and some of the women's organisations that came to visit, I met with the Honourable Member for Leicester East and I some time ago, reflected that process as well, and they want to be part of that. But those organisations do exist, and those are groups that the government must keep reaching out to and must keep involving in that process, because if it's going to be a lasting peace, then it must be a lasting peace for the people of Yemen, as wide as possible, and attendance must be there. But, Mr Deputy Speaker, we lose a huge amount of credibility in this whole discussion. We cannot be a broker for peace while we are involved in arming a side to this conflict. We are complicit in what happens. And the Minister mentioned, and he may wish to clarify this, 318 incidents of concern. 318 incidents of concern. How many more incidents are acceptable to this government if there are 318 incidents of concern that have been picked up by the people involved in the armed forces that are in the ground in Yemen? That's a huge amount of concern to have. And the amount of aid that has gone in is welcome and is good. I believe, and the Minister will correct me if I'm wrong, £202 million in aid since 2015 is dwarfed by the £4.6 billion in arms sales. That is a huge amount of money that is going into producing absolute brutality and desperation on the ground. If we want this country to be a success, we should be putting all of the money and all of the effort into rebuilding it, not to destroying what little is still there.
She talks about arms sales, and I accept the point that we should care about people. But you look at the situation now. Is she aware that some 80 rockets have been fired into Saudi Arabia? And what's stopping those rockets killing people is the US Defence Patriot missile system, defence equipment sold by the United States to Saudi Arabia to stop 80 rockets landing on ordinary people and killing them. Does she agree with those defence sales?
I agree. What I agree with here in this situation is that by putting more arms into this situation, that is continuing to escalate the situation, not to... The honourable member can have his time later on, I'm sure he will wish to contribute. But by adding more weapons to this situation, I don't think, honestly, that is going to help. Mr Deputy Speaker, I think you'll be aware that my daughter has been sent home from nursery sick today. My daughter will be picked up from her nursery by my husband. She will get medicine if she needs it. She will get treatment if she needs it. She will get access to a doctor if she needs that. Unlike parents in Yemen, I will not have to choose, as they have to do, which child to save and which child to let die. And that is a situation that parents in Yemen are facing every single day. Every 10 minutes, a child will die. Parents will have that for the rest of their lives. They will have seen children die before them. Mr Deputy Speaker, we must be committed to finding peace in this situation. We must secure, first and foremost, to let aid in, we must secure a ceasefire.
Hear, hear.
We have plenty of words on this. We've had plenty of words and plenty of commitments and plenty of talk. Mr Deputy Speaker, Yemen can't wait. We need action now.
Hear, hear.